So we've talked about Mirage's stealth and combat, but a story-driven series like Assassin's Creed wouldn't be good, well, without the story part. We still don't know too much about the narrative for Assassin's Creed Mirage, but I'd like to kind of round up the information we have so far and talk about some of the possibilities that could happen with this kind of story. Obviously, since it's practically a prequel to Valhalla with Basim, there's already quite a bit we know just from that game. Basim obviously survives, so does Roshan, which, to be honest, when they first introduced the character, I thought she might be betrayed and killed by Basim or Loki at some point, but the shared history quest at the very least confirms she's alive during the time of Valhalla. Who knows, it's still very likely she may be betrayed by Basim in Mirage, since it seems like in Valhalla she's become a bit of a wanderer of sorts, and even had a line about reclaiming her hidden blade after a long and hard absence.
Reclaimed after a long absence. The years without it were the hardest I've known.
So evidently something happens, whether she's betrayed by Basim or not. I'm sure we'll see what happens to Roshan at the end of Mirage, where we could then assume the journey and hardships she goes through in the events leading to that quest in Valhalla. We also know for sure that in some way, shape, or form, we're going to see Loki's manifestation, or at least small glimpses of it. I don't expect it to be a huge part of the narrative, but rather sprinkled in throughout the story, and maybe it comes to a head in the final act, who knows. But obviously, the thing I'm most excited for is we're finally playing as an assassin again. Let's go!
Whoa, okay, calm down, breathe.
I'm trying.
I said breathe.
I'm trying.
Well, technically not exactly an assassin, but close enough. Let's go! Basim, who was my favorite character from Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and funnily enough, I had made videos previously about why he deserved his own game as our protagonist. This is gonna be interesting. What I love with a character like Basim is that he seems like the kind of protagonist who really lives in that gray area. He's more of an anti-hero type, that's for sure. I just talked about this in my video on the old God of War games, but I love anti-hero protagonists. The moral ambiguity and complexity to bring to their story. It's always really fun to debate whether what their character is doing is justified or not. That, and playing as the good guy can get a little exhausting sometimes, let's be honest. Basim, of course, ended up being one of the primary antagonists of Valhalla, so I think flipping the perspective here and playing through his eyes will be very intriguing, and I'm curious how this character got to the point we see him in Valhalla. Now sure, we have had some sort of gray area protagonists in this series before, not really a fully fleshed anti-hero though. I mean, maybe you could argue someone like Shay or Altair was an anti-hero, even Edward. I don't really see Shay, to be honest, but I don't really think any of those guys would be full anti-heroes. Most protagonists you play as in this series are always clearly meant to be the good guy or hero of the story. It's rare to have a protagonist that lives in between good and bad in this series, and I think in that regard, Basim could be the first. Although I suppose it's a bit hard to understand the character's true intentions with Loki in the mix during Valhalla, so maybe Loki is kind of that guiding force that pushes him into doing some questionable things. Either way, I'm very interested to see how different Basim is as a character, hopefully giving us a different kind of protagonist than what we're used to in this series. Mirage will essentially be telling Basim's origin story and giving us a reintroduction to the Hidden Ones, but basically the Assassin's Creed minus a few things. So this will be the first Assassin's Creed to tell an assassin origin story, technically since Unity. In Syndicate, the Fried twins were already established assassins, and Origins was about how Bayek and Aya would form the Hidden Ones, so I think having a classic assassin origin story with Basim, as well as a reintroduction to the Creed and all their traditions, is well needed. We've already seen from the cinematic trailer that we're gonna hear the tenants, I'm sure multiple times, go through some assassin training with Roshan at Alamut's castle, which is still under construction. In fact, from what I've heard, it sounds like Alamut is going to be where the game's prologue takes place, as a little starter area for training and learning the mechanics before heading into the open world of Baghdad, which I think sounds great. It's been a long time since we've had a thorough look into the Creed and how one becomes an assassin. Plus, some people may not even know how the Assassin's Creed works, since there's so many new players players that will be coming from the RPG games. So I think a reintroduction into the Creed and all the traditions, rituals, and tenets is a great idea. Almost like a soft reboot in a way, kind of. And just how from it sounds, really reminds me of the opening parts in Masyaf Castle from AC1. We also know that Basim starts the game as just a young local street thief at the age of 17 when he's recruited by Roshan into the Hidden Ones. I'm sure we'll be able to play a little as Basim in his thieving adventures from the start, which sounds quite fun to be honest, and I'm just very excited to see the full and proper training process of becoming a Hidden One. It's something we've seen glimpses of before, but never fully. In Unity, you see the weird mind trip induction ceremony. I kinda doubt Basim will have to do that, but Unity sort of grazed over a lot of the assassin training with a 1-year time jump, so I hope we get to see more of that in Mirage. We haven't really seen it too in-depth in the games, at least. Also, just in case you were unaware, Basim will have a new voice actor for Mirage, and not Carlo Rota, who voiced him in Valhalla. I thought he did a great job in Valhalla, but it makes sense for a much younger version of the character to have a different voice actor. In Mirage, he's being played by Lee Majdoub. I'm so sorry if I butchered that, but he doesn't have a lot of credited roles, so I'm very interested to see what he can do. From the little bit we heard from him in the cinematic trailer, it sounded good, and I didn't even realize that it was a different voice actor, which is certainly a compliment. It is also confirmed that there will be no playable modern day sections or missions in Mirage. I suspect there will be little nods and bits here and there to remind you that someone is in the Animus, most likely William Miles, and maybe there will be a little cutscene or two at the beginning and end, I don't really know. Kind of expecting something similar to Unity's modern day, but without the time displacement sections, which to be honest, I don't really feel here or thereabouts. I think modern day is important to this series and always has been, but for a game that's focusing on an assassin story and is shorter than the last few games, I don't think it's a huge loss. I do hope we eventually see what comes of the current modern day storyline with Basim though, whether it's with Project Red or Hexy or both. Now we know very little about the narrative outside of the premise. It's been labeled a coming of age story. That could mean a lot of things, but it will be bringing back the assassin and Templar conflict to a pretty big degree, I would imagine. The Order of Ancients aren't known as the Templars yet at this point, so really it's the assassin-Templar conflict, just both sides are using their placeholder names. Just some rough drafts until they come up with some cooler sounding names in the future. But I'd have to imagine the whole plot will revolve around putting a stop to some Order of Ancients schemes, and maybe a few twists along the way involving Basim and Loki. We're obviously going to spend a lot of time with Roshan as well, and learning more about her past and everything, where something will happen to her by the end, whether it's Basim betraying her or not. Let me know in the comments your theories for what you think may happen in Mirage's story, and if you think a story like this has potential. Personally, I'm quite optimistic about how the story for this game sounds so far, and again, I really like Basim. I think he's an intriguing character, so I'm very interested to play as him and see his story unfold, and what leads to where we see him in Valhalla and the modern day. Hopefully we get some insight as well into Basim's true motives, as those still remain a little murky. But thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Feel free to check out some of my other videos on Mirage thus far. I have a whole playlist worth if you'd like to check it out. Big thank you to my members for supporting me. I really appreciate it, and if you're interested in joining, the link is in the description. Other than that, thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day, Assassins.